Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Philosophy for Philistines channel, otherwise known as Politics for Plebeians, with your host, Bill Reimer, up here at the trailer in Gracefield, Quebec. After the Queen's passing, I noticed some truly vile remarks posted by alleged libertarians on social media, and although they disgust me, I don't approve of censorship. And because I don't approve of censorship, I'm about to tell you exactly what I think of you. It is interesting to note that I'm reading the same level of vitriol from libertarians who have no understanding of the long history of the rule of English common law, and therefore the value of a head of state detached from the political process. The Westminster parliamentary system has resulted in creating some of the most successful governments on earth, and when rights are challenged, it is the very system that you're trashing which holds the key to restoring liberty under law. It is those who claim to want liberty disembodied from the traditions under which it evolved, who share the identical delusion that socialists labor under, namely, belief in an idealized utopia which has never existed. Not only has such utopian ideology never created utopia, which is Greek for no place, by the way, every time it was attempted, it created tyranny and social ruin. And one further thought. Those who advocate such things never defined in practical terms how their utopian vision will work outside of our current legal, constitutional, and parliamentary system, which is based upon having a monarch as symbolic head of state, representing our inherent rights, liberties, and courts of justice. Since the Westminster parliamentary system is the one we inherited, let's examine its achievements in creating the most successful and stable democracies the world has ever known. Dominions which encircle the globe that have provided the most functional, responsible governments which have ever blessed mankind. And let me state the following clearly. The first to recognize that slavery was not an acceptable institution and plied the high seas at great expense to mother country to end it. Let's be clear. Slavery is an institution which still exists with an estimated 30 million people living in bondage. And where does this bondage exist in its worst forms? Why, under communist socialism, where human beings are being used as organ harvesting platforms in CCP-led China. The city of St. Catharines, my own city, was the final terminus on the Underground Railroad for hundreds of people fleeing slavery in the 1820s. The Underground Railroad and Niagara's Freedom Trail was a network of people who hid and guided enslaved black people who were leaving the United States and heading to British North America to seek freedom. Harriet Tubman and abolition. The railroad began at the crossing, which is located along the Niagara River by historic Fort Erie, and ends at the British Methodist Episcopal Church, Salem Chapel. Harriet Tubman, an important Underground Railroad conductor and abolitionist, attended this chapel, which became an important space for early abolitionist activity in British North America. Tubman remained in St. Catharines for 10 years, where she worked as an abolitionist and helped former enslaved people adjust to their new life. William Hamilton Merritt, prominent businessman abolitionist, helped the new citizens purchase land to build the British Methodist Episcopal Church, Salem Chapel, and later the Zion Baptist Church. I provide the web link below this excerpt. Ignorance of history not only destines us to repeat past mistakes, it demonstrates unforgivable laziness in an age when historical resources are available online. If we hope to advance the cause of responsible government, ignorance will not serve our cause. These advances were made possible by famous jurists who had paved the way for universal recognition of liberty under law and universal suffrage. 2 Timothy 2:15 Study to show yourself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Why are we getting our definition of political and philosophical leadings incorrect? The left-right political divide originated during the time of the French Revolution. To the right of the king, which is today's executive branch, sat those who believed the king had the right to veto acts of parliament, while to the king's left sat those who believed that parliament had the right to veto the king. Over many centuries, Britain evolved the Westminster system to designate an almost purely symbolic role for its monarch, which I deem to be essential to our system of governance. Magna Carta has had far-reaching impact in this evolutionary process of limited government. Sir Edward Coke, of Magna Carta is such a fellow that he will have no sovereign fame, explains one of the key sections of Magna Carta on English liberties in 1642. He wrote, Sir Edward Coke, found in Select Writings of Sir Edward Coke in Volume 2. The English judge and member of Parliament, Sir Edward Coke, spelled out the full meaning of what it meant to have English liberties, because he believed that liberty of a man's person is more precious to him than all the rest that follow. He listed the 9 branches which made up the tree of liberty as understood in the mid-17th century. Upon this chapter 29 of Magna, and he's writing now in his own volume in chapter 29, as a root many fruitful branches of the law of England have sprung. This chapter containeth 9 several branches, that no man shall be taken or imprisoned, but per legem terrae, that is, by common law, statute law, or the custom of England. For these words, per legem terrae, being towards the end of the chapter, do refer to all the precedent matters of the chapter. And this has the first place, because the liberty of a man's person is more precious to him than all the rest to follow, and therefore is a great reason that he should be by law relieved therein if he be wronged, and hereafter shall be shown. 2. That no man shall be dispossessed, that is, put out of season, or dispossessed of his freehold, that is, his lands, livelihood, his liberties, his free customs, of such franchises and freedoms and free customs as belong to him by his free birthright, unless it be by lawful judgment, that is, a verdict of his equal, by men of his own condition, or by the law of the land, that is, to speak it once for all, by due course and the process of law. So nothing except for by due process. Somebody should tell Justin Trudeau this. Number 3, that no man shall be outlawed, made ex lex, put out of the law, that is, deprived of the benefit of law, unless he be outlawed according to the law of the land. 4. No man shall be exiled or banished out of his country, that is, nemo perdit patriam. No man shall lose his country, unless he be exiled according to the law of the land. Number 5. No man shall be in any sort destroyed. Destruera, eguid prius structum, and factum fuit, pentus evertere, indirera, unless it be by the verdict of his equals, or according to the law of the land. 6. No man shall be condemned at the king's suite, either before the king in his bench, where the pleas are quorum rege, and so are the words nec super eabum ebimus to be understood, nor before any other commissioner, or judge whatsoever, and so are the words nec super eam mettemus to be understood by the judgment of his peers, that his equals, in accordance to the law of the land. 7. That we sell no man justice or right. Number 8, that we shall deny to no man justice or right. And number 9, we shall defer to no man justice or right. Again, virtually every one of these things, Justin Trudeau has exceeded his legal constitutional limit to govern. Sir Edward Coke wrote a voluminous set of glosses on aspects of English law known as the Institutes. In this case, the second part of the Institutes, the one I read from, he glosses the meaning of the Great Charter, or Magna Carta, of 1215. It elaborated in considerable detail the foundation upon which English liberties rested. It was not published until 1642, some 8 years after Sir Edward's death, but just in time to become part of the intellectual ammunition used by opponents of the monarchy during the English Civil War and Revolution during the 1640s and 1650s. This quotation comes from chapter 29 on the section entitled, "No free man shall be taken or imprisoned, or be disseised of his freehold or liberties, but by lawful judgment of his peers, or by the law of the land." To Coke, this was the root from which sprang many branches of English law regarding individual liberty. One can imagine John Lyburn reading from this passage in his successful defense in his trial for treason in 1649. The juries of his peers acquitted him of his charges, and again I provide the link below these quotes. Only an ignorant fool would or could wish to ignore these traditions and the long history of the evolution of our rule of law. Her late Majesty had 15 prime ministers during her reign, all of whom benefited from her advice and careful guidance. But what does this mean to us today? Since we choose to describe politics as left versus right, we need to admit that those who claim to be leftist are actually extreme right-wing authoritarians who want the executive to be able to veto Parliament. This places them to the right of the king, making Justin Trudeau an extreme right-wing fanatic. This has been demonstrated clearly during COVID-19, with Justin Trudeau suspending parliamentary oversight of government while giving himself unconstitutional powers to ignore the will of the people and their parliament. Classical liberals in the English sense recognize the importance of the symbolic in government. Since Her late Majesty's passing, I have read libertarians spewing the most vile and loathsome nonsense about her and the role of the monarch in our Westminster version of limited constitutional parliamentary democracy, without ever suggesting by what process we would be able to replace our system and what that new form of government would look like. It appears to me that libertarians despise the rule of English common law, which is arguably one of our greatest inheritances. It is the very reason that Lieutenant Governor Simcoe was appointed to the newly separated province of Upper Canada in the 1790s, since the American Loyalists who lost their land in the States did not want to live under French civil law, which Lower Canada had at that time and indeed still has today. If we are to hope for greater liberty under law, by ignoring the traditions which has created the most successful democracy on earth, we are merely deluding ourselves. For libertarians to assert they have something better than our admittedly flawed system of government without having a single example of the form of government they advocated ever having existed shares a similar delusion that leads radical socialists to claim that communism has never been tried in spite of its tyranny, all its tyranny and failures, and the 100 million deaths stacked up under it, which continue on to this day. So if you hope to increase liberty here in Canada, I strongly advise a little gratitude for those who struggled mightily within the Westminster system to apply Magna Carta to all men by reminding our illiberal and authoritarian government that Magna Carta is such a fellow as will have no sovereign. We have much work to do, but that work will not be accomplished by tearing down. It can only be furthered by building on the millennia-old foundations which began in the times of Witten and Tyng proto-parliaments in Scandinavian and Anglo-Saxon culture onto the modern Westminster system which exists throughout the Commonwealth today. After all, we have a common enemy, namely those who have the temerity to believe that they are sovereign to Magna Carta. It will be more than sufficient for us to remind them on no uncertain terms that no one is above the Great Charter and that the rule of law must apply equally to all. God bless you, folks. I hope those are prayerful and thought-provoking words. And to you libertarians, give your heads a shake, okay? I'm a classical liberal in the English sense, and I have no idea what you believe in, and you can't even tell me, other than some abstract sense of unlimited freedom, how that freedom will exist in a situation where there is no rule of law. Cheers.